Okay, so they're kind of guiding me to talk briefly about the Ascension symptoms. The spins. I've had the spins lately. And for those of you who have watched these videos that I've done in the past, sometimes I'll do this movement. It just is something that I'm guided to do. I do it in healing sessions. But these spins have been in the opposite direction, like whoosh. Can't explain that necessarily. Maybe when I go into a little flow, it'll come through. The word that comes through is recalibration. But also, I was guided to share that I found myself in, okay, so what they're guiding me to talk about right now is resistance. Oftentimes, we don't know what that means. I did a video on non-resistance or the path of least resistance, and I'm going to share a couple of ways that you can tell if you're in resistance. I didn't even realize I was resisting until the other day, and I went, just relax. So the way that I describe it is, are you getting ready? Are you ever kind of getting on a ride? Okay, and it's like you're on a roller coaster, or you're in a movie and you're like kind of tightening everything up, or you're like, ee! I know that sounds funny, but that's what it feels like. For me, in the last week, I caught myself quite a few times clenching my jaw or being like, it's like these ascension symptoms come in, or an activation occurs, or a shift happens on the earth. And it's like we are in a space of, we're here, we're used to operating here, and then all of a sudden we get this shift and we're here, but we want to bring it back down to here because that's what we're used to operating in. This is the way I was describing it to a friend yesterday. And so I'm getting goosebumps. So as soon as we let go and we just ride that kind of resistance, we let that resistance go and ride that incoming wave of energy, it'll help us step up. Where instead of trying to hold on for dear life, I think the video I did was let go or be dragged. It can literally feel like that physically, that we're like hanging on for dear life because it just feels like out of our control. So I'm sharing that because that's one perspective of what I've been feeling as far as ascension symptoms go. Or when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're laying there and everything is, you feel anxiety or anxiousness. Again, it's tapping back into that space of just taking a deep breath in and letting it go. Maybe instead of resisting and fighting it and saying, I have to go back to sleep, I have to go back to sleep, get up, get a drink of water, do some stretches, maybe write in your journal, go outside, put your feet in the grass, look at the moon, and then go back to sleep. It's like we're being invited to recognize that we just have to break that feeling of what is going on right now and freaking out. Your back, it's almost like the other example that I used was when you're scuba diving and you have to equalize. So sometimes the equalizing will feel very odd and uncomfortable. Sometimes you just have to lay down. Even if you're at work, go out to your car for 5 minutes and just close your eyes and just let that equilibrium kind of come back in, and recognize that we may not feel the same. Like it may not ever be the same as it was. Same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. Talking Heads. I'm thinking of that song. And it's a matter of acclimating and just okay, it's time for me to equalize. Scuba divers out there know, or snorkelers, you know, just let that kind of shift. We might be off balance for a few days. We might need to sleep more. But it's literally paying attention to those little feelings in the body that are showing you, uh-oh, I'm in resistance right now because I'm like really anxious, or I'm really uncomfortable right now. And just stopping to recognize that can even be helpful. So yeah, I'm going to go into a little flow. I don't have a timer on here, so I'm not sure how long I've been talking, but let's just kind of see where this goes. Dawning, crying, I talked about this in a video a couple videos ago. Shifting the energy around that way. Think of your alchemical container as in a process of expanding. And as it bubbles out and then comes back in, there is this time lapse, so to speak, or gap in the energy field that then needs to acclimate or refill, so to speak, to then balance out the proportions or the scales. So this is in reference to the harmonics, sound that we are kind of finding ourselves in. And this takes patience. This takes it takes that sense of recognizing that we're going through these shifts and honoring our alchemical container, our bodies. So what I'm kind of seeing is that we're in this different part of space. It's almost like we just landed on the moon. I'm hearing walking on the moon. That the lyrics from, so I got a little bit of 80s going on, don't I always have a little bit of 80s going on? And as we see things from these new perspectives, recognizing that we also feel things from a new perspective and not really limiting ourselves to our old perspective, but also not limiting ourselves to how we used to feel. This is the new normal for many of us, and this is constantly being upgraded. And so if we start to feel like we are losing it, is what they're saying specifically, meaning losing our footing, losing our base, losing our foundation. It's more important than ever to step back into alignment with our higher perspective. So ask to plug in and anchor into source energy, connect with the earth, take our moments of recalibration, taking those naps, drinking plenty of clean and high vibrational foods, water, juices, like fresh, organic, trying to realign with the new energies. So what they're showing me is that it's going to be even more obvious and clear that we're not in harmony with things, and they're going to feel really uncomfortable. And this goes back to the basics. So, all right, I see this on like 10 different levels. So as we get multidimensional, it's not just the food, it's not just the water, it's the conversations that we're having, it's the clothing that we're wearing, it's the all of these little infrastructures. I'm being guided to pull out the whiteboard. Okay, so I'm gonna pull out the whiteboard. I think I can pause this, which is really exciting. So thank you, Kevin, again for showing me this platform, because I didn't have to buy a new webcam yet. I'm going to, because I want to be able to start walking around. But what I'm seeing is that in order to get used to walking in these higher vibrations and filling these new shoes, we have to grow into these new shoes. So from one perspective, we're already there, right? Because there is no time. But from the old perspective, there's a time lapse. And it's like a lot of that Mandela effect, like, whoa, what just happened? For a minute, I thought I was here, but I'm really here, and I don't quite understand how I got here. So that's one perspective. The other perspective is the foods. Like, it's going to be really obvious that that old food that we used to eat is not agreeing with us anymore. We might have thought it was healthy before. What they're sharing with me is that even if you think that you're eating healthy, your body's going to tell you, you might be, but your body's going to tell you this doesn't fit in our body anymore. Because it's almost like a walking on the moon. Our higher self is stepping in to take over the switches for a little while. And that's what we want. That's what we've asked for. We're not losing. We're growing. We're expanding out. So I see some people are afraid of giving up that control because they're so used to being dialed into a certain system that to feel more expansive is scary feeling for some people. So this is one perspective. From other people, they're really going to dig it. They're going to be like, whoa, I love this walking on the moon feeling. And other people, it's going to really mess with their senses. So we might have trouble seeing. Our ears might be a little off right now. You know, I was swimming in the ocean recently, so I'm thinking, well, am I feeling this way because I've got something going on with my ears? Yet I have a friend who had some serious allergy issues with her ears recently. So I'm just sharing, like, there's lots of different presentations. We're changing in all of our ways. So seeing is different than it was 6 months ago. How we see, not just from our perspective, but physically, visually, the cones in our eyes, our proprioception, everything is changing. How we see things physically, as well as our perception on our perspective, excuse me. So I'm going to do the next video with the whiteboard. They're just I'm just going to stay in flow right now. As we become more lucid in our dreamlike state, in our state of awakening, in our reality, think of a lucid dream. If you've ever had a lucid dream, and if you haven't, they're just describing it to me right now. In a lucid dream, we are awake as the dreamer. Yet we recognize that there is a dreamlike quality to the reality that we are, again, kind of flowing in. And as our third eyes expand out, we see things sometimes from a broader, more a wider perspective. And that can make us feel unstable as well. So imagine you're seeing things out in this angle and now they're broader. We're going to have a lot more going on that is hard for us to sometimes acclimate to. So if you think of your periphery vision, my speaking is even more right now. I kind of feel like I'm speaking in a tunnel. A tunnel. So our peripheral vision is expanding. So we didn't necessarily see out here before, but now we are. So we're going to get distracted sometimes and go, what was that? Or what am I hearing? Or why am I feeling this way? It's extrasensory expansiveness is essentially what's going on from one perspective. Opening up to the many perspectives that we are playing within. And just as in a lucid dream, you are essentially in control of the dream. You don't feel that way when you first recognize that you're in a lucid dream sometimes. There will be certain triggers to get you to recognize that you're dreaming. They keep showing me pictures of the hands. So if you've ever read the book on lucid dreaming, or books, they talk about, look at your hands and you'll be able to see your hands will change. And then all of a sudden you'll realize, oh, I'm dreaming because my fingers are like bigger than they're supposed to be, or they'll disappear, or you know how dreams work. They're just kind of sharing that that's kind of what's going on in our reality. Old systems are collapsing. The Mandela effect is going to be a lot more common even than before. Like, you guys, if you're not familiar with what the Mandela effect is, I think it's where Google it. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on it, but essentially you'll remember something as being one way and now it's actually another way because your perceptions have changed, but also the timelines are changing. But it's not just the timelines, it's realities that are collapsing. So I'm going to just pause this, and I guess I am going to do a whiteboard video. So bear with me. I haven't done this before, so I'm hitting pause. All right, so I'm back. And this is going to be a really different video. I don't know how I'm going to post this or when I'm going to post it now that I've started on this, because this is new for me. So we're going to play. Now, I left this up because I'm seeing some things, so I'm going to back up. I was guided just to keep going. Now, I'm not part of this. I want to go into and share that memory is coming up a lot for me and a friend of mine, which I'll get back to later. And in addition, the reason I'm sharing this particular, change. So earlier in the video, I said, I was guided to fast for a few days. The words were literally fast, not too fast. So I took that as, okay, I need to fast and not eat for maybe 24 hours and just do a cleanse. And then as soon as I started in this video, I felt like I was going to pass out. And the other message that came through was shift, change. You got to roll with it. So sometimes it's about staying with the path, of course, and saying, no, I'm going to do this and I'm going to stick it out. But then if you're guided to do something different, follow that. So it's not a matter of not finishing what you start, but it's a matter of paying attention when new things have entered into your path that are leading you to do something different. So I was guided to eat a bunch of peanut butter just now because I literally was not grounded. I felt very walking on the moon. So the reason I'm going to go into this now, this is what my old video was, and I'm just going to roll with this. This might be a very long video, and I might break it up into segments. So the idea is go with the flow, recognize when there's certain things going on that you just have to kind of roll with because things are changing so fast that we have to have our ability to respond to a situation in any given moment is not being tested per se, but it'll be easier if we just go with the flow than say, nope, be stubborn about it. And this is also presenting itself in a myriad of ways for people. So I'm going to go into this, and then I'm actually going to, I know what I'm going to do. So I'm going to end this video, and then I'll do this at the end. So what I mean by that is, for example, I thought that I should fast, but the message that was coming through was fast. So things are happening quickly, and I misinterpreted that, but I didn't really misinterpret it. Because ultimately I am going to fast, but I might just wait until tomorrow to do it, or I might wait and do it at the end of the week. So it's now in my radar, but I'm not hooked into that specific timeline, and I'm not fighting or resistant to the other messages that are coming in that are saying, well, now we're going to go this direction. So pay attention to what your body's telling you. If you think you have to do one thing, and I said this earlier, which was ironic in the earlier portion of the video, that was basically I was saying, you know, your body might have thought you might be thinking you need a lot of, let's say, yogurt and, you know, oh, I've got to eat a lot of yogurt because it's good for my stomach. But then all of a sudden you're getting these messages that maybe you shouldn't eat yogurt. Switch it up by doing more sauerkraut or something like that that has probiotics in it. I'm using that as an example. It could be that you're really used to eating lots of vegetables and not a lot of carbs, but now you're being guided, like I have been, to eat a lot of potatoes. I've been eating potatoes like crazy, and I recognize it's because I need to ground. I need to just kind of not float off on the moon and kind of stay focused and not too spacey, because we can have those moments where we feel like we're going to pass out when these major shifts have occurred. Now I'm going to go into, I'm being guided to talk a little bit about this and remind you guys, I just did a video on the chakra system. And what I'm kind of seeing is that we are basically going through a different portion of space right now. There's some sort of, like, the message that came through was that we're basically collapsing a huge collective timeline. This is one perspective. So this perspective isn't 100% accurate in that's exactly what's going on. It's just one version of what's going on. The other, one of the other messages that came through is it's collapsing a particular bubble of reality. And I'll get back to that in just a moment. But what happens when that happens is our bodies are also going through a bunch of changes, as I talked about in the chakra video, which I'll get to in a minute. And as this shifts and morphs, we're going to feel this a lot. Our senses are expanding. So we're going to feel a lot of these shifts and changes more palpable, in a palpable way than maybe we did before. Also this bubble, so I'll just kind of draw that out now. And I was guided to leave this wheel up and these cubes up. And then I'm gonna, sorry, this is so unorganized, guys. I'm experimenting here and going with the flow, right? So, all right. Part of what, lost my markers. So let's say you've got these bubbles of reality, and you've got this one, and you've got this one, right? And they're all kind of overlapping each other. I don't know where this is going. Kind of know where this is going. My higher self knows where this is going, right? I cancel, I delete that. I do know where this is going at some level. This is red. Okay, so you get the point. Now picture this all over the board, all these bubbles going out in all these different directions. Hopefully, turn that a little bit. Oops. Sorry, guys. Okay. So now all these bubbles, and let's just say that this particular group of bubbles down here, let's pretend these are all different colors, okay? Wave, wave. And let's call these dimensions, just for, or densities, okay? We'll say down here is a denser, and this is less dense. So these bandwidths are going through these bubbles, and these are going through these bubbles. And then you have timelines, we'll say, that we'll say this is a timeline that connects both of those. One here and this timeline here. And these are all bubbles. I know my writing is just, my point is that what I see happening, or what they're showing me, is that this timeline, boop, just collapsed. Gone. Not gone, but just, we are not in that timeline anymore. It's a little bit like the Mandela effect. Luke, I am your father. people don't remember it as Luke, as I am your father. I remember it that way. But I guess if you go back and watch the movie, which I've never done, it doesn't say that anymore. And other people go, well, it never did. Because in their reality, it never did. And in my reality or other people's realities, it did. Because we were sharing these bubbles, and these little bubbles of reality just now like are gone. They've dissolved, we'll say. And I know that this is a really linear way of thinking of it. And I'm sure someday I'll be able to explain it a little bit better. But for now, this is the message that's coming through. So now these bubbles aren't there anymore. This whole timeline is gone, right? But this one's still there. So it's almost like what I'm seeing is this gap or space, a void in essence, that feels like what just happened, something just shifted. And I feel like there's going to be a lot more, your family's going to remember something happening one way, and you're going to remember it happening a completely different way. And that's one example, right? Depending, or friends or whatever. So this just happened, and this is in part, even though this timeline's collecting dense and non, now on top of that, what I'm seeing is this lower density though is also disappearing. So now you had all this stuff holding a certain pattern down here, and that's lightened up. So it's almost like this has moved up or gotten faster, I don't know, sped up. And now you've got more higher density or less dense, right, bubbles. And so people are going to feel like they're in this space still, right? Some people are still there, or they remember this because they're holding on to that pattern. Other people are going to be like, I don't really remember. So we might have some like little memory glitches in the matrix, so to speak, is kind of what it feels like. And I know I'm going to get some more answers on this in like a really more definitive way. But right now, this is what I'm seeing. And this is my perspective. So this is my non-scientific version of what I see from my guidance team. They talk to me sometimes in pictures. Now the next video, I'm going to go into some more science-based stuff, and we're just going to play and go down the rabbit hole and see where it leads, because that's what I'm being guided to do. Somebody out there watching this video will go, hey, I know what she's talking about, and they'll take it to the next level perhaps. So essentially, this is that walking on the moon. All of a sudden, this bubble is burst, and we're just floating, like waiting to find that ground into this layer. So in a nutshell, I'm just going to end on that note. I'll probably do some light language to assist, which I did a little bit in the beginning, but I'll probably do some more light language to kind of help to anchor these energies and to help us to ground the frequencies that are coming in from the sun and from this. It's like a planetary alignment. It's almost like we're in a different place in space. So that's what I've been feeling. Any hoozles, that was it. In love and light, guys, thank you so much for your patience on this video. And I'm going to be working more with the Zoom platform, and I'll get used to it eventually. So thank you for your patience in the meantime. And if any of you are feeling all of this stuff, I hope this just kind of gave you an idea of maybe why you're feeling it. We're in a different place in space. We're in a different, you know, our memories about things are different because our bodies, just like what I erased earlier, are shifting. And as we shift, our memories change because we are seeing things from a different perspective in one regard. And then, of course, these different bubbles that are bursting are good because that energy that was dense and layered and thick and holding us down. Picture, I had a visualization. I know I said I was done, but I had a visualization of like somebody walking on the bottom of the ocean with weights. So it felt like we were kind of walking with these weights, like Frankenstein shoes. But what's happening is now those weights have been lifted. And so until we can kind of get back into that layer and feel a little bit more grounded, that we're going to have these moments of pretty big shifts in our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, alchemical transition is what I'm hearing. So in love and light, namaste.